anytime we try something new, we're a beginner. I'd never been an entrepreneur before like you. And so first and foremost, do it anyway, even though you're scared. Leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. In a nutshell, leadership is influence. How are you going to influence people and make a positive impact in their life?
Pictures on, or pictograms on the internet saying that leader does this, manager does this, and they're making them look like opposite, like manager is a bad thing and leader is a bad thing. And nowadays everybody wants to be a leader, but nobody wants to be a manager anymore because it's not fashionable.
I would say that in our industry, even though people have the title of community manager, assistant community manager, regional property manager, that's a title, but they are expected to be, right? And we hope that they are leaders. You earn more respect when you respect the other person and what they bring to the table than you do if you're just telling someone what to do or not listening. In order to lead anyone effectively, you must first lead yourself. So I would challenge you to really be honest and ask yourself,
Stephanie, I wanted to ask you about what drove you towards leadership coaching. I know you had an amazing career in property management operations. So what made you shift?
Sure, great question, Adrian. I have been really intrigued by and interested in what makes people tick since I was a little girl. Back even when I was in high school, I was part of different leadership groups and mentorship groups. There was a group called PAL, Peers, Assistance, and Leadership, where we were trained to, coach younger students or sometimes troubled kids to help mentor them to get them on the right path, both with school and in life. So really at a young age, I've always been focused on mentoring, coaching, or helping people. When I was in college, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I was pre-med, but I was also a psychology major because, again, just the way that people's minds work and what makes them tick has always intrigued me, and I've always been a helper. So I actually walked into an apartment community while I was in college and walked out with a job leasing. Got 47 leases my first month, and I thought, oh, this will be a super fun job while I'm in college. It's temporary, and I've made an entire career out of it. So I was on the operations side for about the first 10 years of my career doing leasing and management. And I moved into a training role, a hybrid training role, while I was still managing communities for two different companies. So helping to onboard people, coach and mentor them. I would do workshops even with my on-site teams before that official training role on Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. When an opportunity opened up at Graystar, that I was with for 21 years, I had some training experience at JPI, who I worked for prior to that. And that's kind of what I did. So I've always been focused on people development and mentorship in some form or fashion. And so when I left the corporate world, it just really was a natural transition for me to continue to focus on helping people with both their leadership development and personal growth, but to be able to do that full time. And so you might see behind me, it says Maxwell Leadership. And so when I started my own consulting, speaking and coaching business, I aligned myself with the Maxwell leadership team because I've always loved John Maxwell's books and his leadership principles. And so that's been really, really wonderful, as I started my business entrepreneurial journey a few years ago.
What triggered that decision to leave the corporate world behind and start a business of your own?
Yeah, great question.
I know the golden calves are hard to take off. So I'm speaking for myself as well.
Right. Yeah.
I follow the same parents. So I'm curious, what is your story? What's behind?
Yeah. And it is, it's challenging to leave even though the corporate world comes with its own challenges, right? And no day is the same. The company that I was with, we had experienced a lot of growth, which was awesome, and a lot of transitions, acquiring other companies, et cetera. And I was very fortunate that that company allowed me to be really involved in the National Apartment Association Education Institute. I served on chairs and committees and past president of the Education Institute. So I was really blessed to have their support in that. And they also supported me speaking at different conferences and events while I was working for them. So through that, I had a few people that I consider my mentors over the years telling me, hey, you should really think about going off on your own, right? And my response always was, well, that seems, somewhat enticing. I don't know that I want to take that on because it's a different animal. You're hunting for every meal, you're fishing every day, and you're everything. You wear every hat when you're starting out. And so I had given it some thought, but it was kind of to the side. And I had younger children at the time too. But then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, we had been doing some restructuring as we were growing, and we were acquiring another company. And we had restructured my division, and the person that I was reporting to had some different ideas on kind of what that restructure looked like. And, we had several conversations, and ultimately kind of the role that she wanted me to fill, it wasn't where I wanted to be in my career. And it didn't give me the opportunity to leverage my strengths and my passions the way that I wanted to. And so that ultimately resulted in me being laid off, which I've never been fired from a job. I've never been laid off, and it was COVID. So I knew that the restructuring was going to happen because we'd been through a lot of that. And I was really lucky that a lot of roles had been created for me over the years that didn't exist previously. So I think I had this expectation that was just going to happen again, and they were going to plug me in somewhere else. But it didn't, because, there were 3 rounds of layoffs and everyone was struggling. And, you remember how crazy the world was. And so, my position was eliminated. And I will tell you, though, even though I was probably in shock for about a minute on that call, that phone conversation, it was really a blessing in disguise, right? And I know people say everything happens for a reason, but it really, really does. And I'm a firm believer in thinking that life happens for you, not to you. It's mind shift, right? Mindset thinking. And it gave me the opportunity to be brave and to do what I really had been longing to do for many years, but I wasn't brave enough to take the leap. And so it was the push that I really feel like, there was a higher power behind that, to be honest. So here I am. Yeah. But during a global pandemic, which, was kind of scary, but in hindsight, I actually think it was the perfect timing because the whole world was in disarray. Everybody's worlds were being turned upside down. We were all going through change. And so it really gave me this opportunity to think long and hard about, was I living in my purpose, and how was I going to live in my purpose and use my strengths and gifts to help others?
I love the purpose part. I'm finding myself in a very similar space. I'll say I'm finding myself in a very similar story as yours, as a first-time entrepreneur. So I wanted to ask you, what are some lessons that you would love to share with others that are maybe considering, they're toying with the idea of leaving the corporate world and starting a business on their own? What are some lessons learned, some pieces of advice that you have for them?
Yeah. Great question. So my biggest piece of advice, well, a couple of them. The first thing I'm going to start off with is addressing that insecurity or fear or doubt, right? So anytime we try something new, we're a beginner. We don't know what we don't know, right? And so while you can have tons of experience or passion or knowledge in a particular area, for example, me, people development, right? I'd never been an entrepreneur before like you. And so, first and foremost, Do it anyway, even though you're scared. Okay. Do it anyway. But secondly, because you don't know what you don't know, you need to align yourself with people that can help support you. And that can be mentors. So, again, I did have some people that I consider mentors and friends who had been consultants or speakers full time. And so I was able to reach out to them and talk to them and really kind of pick their brain on lessons learned, hurdles, things that I should consider or avoid. But then outside of that, align yourself with other groups of entrepreneurs and coaches who can help you navigate the pitfalls and who can also help hold you accountable, right? Because when you're now a company of one, you can be your, biggest cheerleader and biggest asset, or you can be your worst enemy, right? Because you and you alone have to hold yourself accountable. And so, because I am a coach, right, and a consultant, I truly believe every coach needs a coach. And so, I actually have 6 coaches in different areas of my life, and they hold me accountable. They teach me things that I don't know. They help me to find my confidence when I am falling into that analysis paralysis, recovering perfectionist, right? And I think that's crucial. So, your network, one of my coaches says this, and I just spent the weekend in Dallas with him. I'm at a business building workshop. But one of the things that he says all the time is your network equals your net worth. And net worth, not just monetarily, but also in terms of what you're able to kind of bring to others, right? And so overcome the fear, number one. And number two, align yourself with mentors and coaches. Those are the 2 best pieces of advice that I could give anyone. Because even though you may start off as a solopreneur, even if you have plans to scale, you don't know what you don't know. And the best way to get where you want to go is to have someone help shine a light on that, right? And help you pave the way and share with you lessons learned. If they've done it before, they know the pitfalls and they can help you hopefully avoid some of the mistakes that they made that they wish they would have done differently, right?
You mentioned mentors earlier. Which mentors would you like to give a shout out to that help you during this transition?
Dr. Debbie Phillips, I consider her a mentor and a friend, and she is one of the best cheerleaders of people that I know. And she does that for so many people in the multifamily space. So, Dr. Debbie Phillips, another longtime friend, is Cynthia Ann King. And Cynthia Ann, I actually hired as a consultant when I was at Graystar, and we were going from very regional operations to centralized and trying to put some structure around consistent operations in learning and development. So I brought her in to help with my team, and we've remained connected and friends over the years and have spoken together. And she's now on the operator side again, but she was a consultant for many, many years. And so she's taught me a lot. And I know I can really text either one of them and ask them a question, and they're going to, give me their advice, and they're going to be honest about it too, which is awesome. Another person that I want to give a shout out to, and she's retired now, but Jackie Ramstead. So Jackie Ramstead is a speaker that's from Austin. I met her, I think, when I was a leasing professional a million years ago, and went to some of her seminars, and she taught, I think, NALP or CAM. And she's actually one of the people who kept telling me years and years ago, you need to think about going out on your own and speaking and coaching and all of that. So those 3 come to mind, but there are so many others, honestly. So I don't want to, if I didn't mention your name, I'm sorry. But those are 3 off the top of my head that really made a difference. And there are so many. I think about all of the people in multifamily who, one of the things that I think makes this industry unique is, yes, it's stressful because we're dealing with people, right? But, and yes, we're competitive, but it is a multifamily family, right? And there are so many people that I've met over the years that support one another. And that's such an inspiration. But those three have been my mentors for years. And then, of course, I have several that are outside of the space, but those are three that people who are listening will likely know.
You just said earlier your network is your net worth. Share with us, please, some things that really work for you, and how did you benefit from networking? I just think that it's an underrated resource to me. I'm a big networker, so I see this as the primary way to like get my brand becoming more known, and for business and just for about everything. It's not even about like a monetary incentive. I grew up this way, like I had a burning desire to connect with people. I love, I'm a study of human nature. I do 4 podcasts, as you could imagine. I talk to a lot of people, and in part is because I wanted to talk to as many people as I can, interesting individuals. So, what are some benefits from networking? What are some pieces of advice that you have to share with us, and how you benefited from networking, and how can others, and how should they network?
Yeah, gosh, there's so much to unpack there. So I want to define what that means to me, right? Because sometimes, yes, networking is essential. We all have to do it. It's part of business building. But sometimes people look at it as, okay, I need to network. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to make a list. I'm going to meet these people. Here's my goal. Here's what I want out of it. Here's the outcome. And while there's nothing wrong with that, that can sometimes come across as very transactional, and it can sometimes backfire because we all know when someone's talking to us and we feel like it's genuine and they have a true interest in getting to know us, or when someone is trying to get something from us, right? And I talk about this in sales too. Everyone likes to buy, no one likes to be sold to, right? And so I think it's really important, especially for people who are starting off with networking, and maybe that's not your natural skill, but you want to grow that area. That's great. Make sure that you're not being transactional. So in your mind, don't look at it as, I'm going to go talk to this person because I want to get something out of them. That should not be your thought process or in your intention. Your intention should be, I'm going to show up in the right rooms, at the right conferences, in the right places where I can meet quality people, where I can learn something, where I can add value and build relationships. And if you look at it from that perspective, then a natural byproduct of that is doors will start opening. Doors that you never even dreamed of will start opening. But if you focus more on building relationships and genuinely connecting with people and having a mindset of curiosity, that's going to get you much further than transactional intent. Now, some of the salespeople listening may disagree with me, and you're probably amazing at what you do, but that's my philosophy. And that's what works for me because I really cherish authentic human connection. And I can tell because my intuition is super high if it's authentic or transactional, right? So that would be my biggest tip when it comes to networking. Yeah.
Stephanie, leadership. I like to get your own definition of leadership. And then I like to get your vision about leadership in multifamily specifically, because that's kind of the main space that you're in. Am I saying this wrong?
No, the majority of my clients are from multifamily because that's the space that I was in for so many years. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
How do you define leadership? And then, what's your vision about for multifamily leadership? How would you envision a very successful leadership in multifamily?
I'm going to use a quote by John Maxwell, who is my mentor and my friend, that came to mind immediately when you asked me that. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. In a nutshell, leadership is influence. how are you going to influence people and make a positive impact in their life? If I think about, we've all had leaders, right? Some good, some not so good, some unfortunately horrible, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. And if we think about, what was it that made a leader quote unquote good or great? When I ask people that question, most of the time they're going to list some pretty meaningful characteristics. So I'm going to play this with you for just a moment, if I can, Adrian. So if you think about like leaders that you've had in your life, think about one person who you would consider to be one of the greatest leaders you've ever had. What was it that made them great?
I'm actually going even further. I'm going to mention a name, right? Even though I had so many, but one that comes to mind first is Kelly Steele. You
Love
probably
Kelly.
you probably know the
Yes,
name. You
love
know
her.
Kelly. We because
She was on our PMOC back in the day. She was awesome.
yeah, we all worked at Greystar about the same time. What I liked about Kelly was that she had a way about herself that was a very humble way in being a servant leader. She wasn't looking like she's above, she's on the top, and she's just gonna like top down give people direction. She never shied away from rolling her sleeves, from like actually showing people how it's done, really hands on, talking to people, picking up the phone and actually calling someone at the side, not just the community manager, but if she needed to talk to a service technician. She wasn't, it wasn't beneath her to talk to just about anyone in organization. Now, not only that, but she went on her way to like know people, to know their stories. The first thing that I learned about her indirectly when I interviewed with Greystar was that the recruiter that actually helped me facilitated an interview for me was that I'm gonna present you, introduce you to this company. At the time, Greystar was nowhere near what they are today in size. They had probably like 7 properties in Atlanta. And she said, one thing about this individual is that people absolutely love working for her. And then that was one of the first things that I picked up from the moment that I started working with Kelly, is that I really enjoy just being part of her team, working and just making things happen for the team that she was leading. So we basically win together. Amazing story out there.
That's awesome. And so when you were talking, and I remember Kelly, and she's just a lovely human being. But when you were talking, this is what I find all the time is that when people talk about the best leader they've ever had, there's always an element of that leader really being great at making that human connection and seeing people as individuals and being caring and being someone that they can count on. I very rarely ever hear when someone says, oh, this leader was great because they scaled our business to $80 million. Now, that's an incredible skill, right? Because the leaders focused on profitability and hopefully creating a company that we can all work for a very long time. And that's important. But when you ask people, what was it that made someone a great leader? It's always because that leader influenced them in a positive way and made a genuine connection with them. I'm going to talk about, one of and there have been many, so I couldn't possibly list them all, and we are limited on time, but I'm going to list one who, is one of my favorite leaders who's made such a positive impact in my life. And you'll know her because she is still with Greystar, but Jackie Roan. And so Jackie and I worked indirectly on projects when I was in learning and development. She was one of my internal customers, if you will. So I'd known her for many years, but then I had the benefit of working directly with and for Jackie the last maybe 8 years that I was with Greystar. And people would say to me, oh, I love Jackie, but she seems tough. Is that hard? But I'm also a very direct person. So I'm a DI on the DISC scale. So I prefer direct communication. I don't want to have to guess what someone means or what they're trying to say. I also appreciate leaders who push you to be better, because that's also a role of a leader. But what I love about Jackie, and she was not only tough and direct, but she has a heart of gold. She truly cared about me and saw me as an individual, not just in my work life and where she could help me get better, or support me, right? She was super supportive, but she also cared about my personal life and my kids and whatever else was going on. And so I knew that I could count on her to always be there if I needed to pick up the phone, right? I could count on her to be honest and give me her real opinion on something. I didn't have to guess, did she really mean that? Like, she was going to tell me. I knew she was going to have my back, right? And that's what people need from leaders. They need someone they can trust. They need someone who casts a vision. They need someone who's truly compassionate, right? And they need some sense of security, because in our jobs, whether it's multifamily or anywhere else, there's a lot of volatility, right? Just in the business world. And for a leader to be able to help you navigate that and give you that sense of, okay, they've got a vision, they know where we're going, we're going to get through this together, is huge.
Stephanie, I want to get your take on this. Is someone with a management title a leader automatically? Does that come with a package? If you're a manager of any kind, are you a leader as well?
I mean, title alone, I'm going to rephrase that a little bit, but title alone does not make someone a leader. Now, they may have been given a title where they now have responsibilities to lead, and that's great, but that's a huge responsibility. Not everyone takes on that responsibility in the way that they should. And it's not always their fault. You know, sometimes we promote people into a leadership role, title, or position because they were an excellent star performer, right? So they were really good at being an individual contributor to their team or their company. But that doesn't always translate. Just because someone's a superstar in their role doesn't always translate to, now it's a different skill set, because you can't do it all any longer. Your job now is to get things done through people and to guide and support them. And that's a very different skill set. Now, can anyone be a leader? What the statistics from Gallup say is that there are 20% of people that are kind of natural born leaders. That's their natural talent, skills, abilities, their personality. They're going to be a great leader anywhere they go. That's just how they were made, right? They still need to hone their skills and sharpen the saw and all of that, but they have this natural inherent ability to lead. The other 80%, yes, people can be a leader, but they need to have the right mindset, and they need to be open to being coached, right? And being led themselves. Because in order to lead anyone effectively, we must first lead ourselves. And who's the hardest person we will ever lead?
Ourselves?
Yeah. So to answer your question, I mean, it's not a black and white, but I think what you were getting at is, does title alone mean that someone's a leader? And no, it doesn't. It means now you have a lot more responsibility, and hopefully you will step up to the plate and recognize how much responsibility that is when you're responsible for others, and you will adopt the right mindset, get the right coaching, work on yourself. I mentioned that I was at a business conference this past weekend with one of my coaches, because I firmly believe every coach needs a coach. And if I'm going to try to develop others, well, I better be continuing to develop myself.
One of the things that I love to tell to you when it comes to leadership, it's top of mind for me. More often than not, leadership is described in opposition with management. Like, I see all sorts of like pictures on or pictograms on the internet saying that leader does this, manager does this, and they're making them look like opposite. Like, manager is a bad thing and leader is a bad thing. And nowadays, everybody wants to be a leader, but nobody wants to be a manager anymore because it's not fashionable. I strongly believe that we need the managers. Like, without managers, like, companies will not run. So, what's your take on leader versus manager, and which are the places that you find for both, and what's your take on this antagony that's being created between leader and a manager? I think that we could come up with a better definition for a leader versus saying that it's the opposite of a manager or something like that.
Yeah. No, that's a really great point, especially considering that so many of the positions in our industry, right, particularly on site and even at the regional level, you have community managers, you have assistant community managers, you have regional property managers. And I certainly don't think the intent of that grid that's been going around for years, right? A leader does this, a manager does this. I would say that in our industry, even though people have the title of community manager, assistant community manager, regional property manager, that's a title, but they are expected to be, right? And we hope that they are leaders, because the difference, the purpose of that sort of, two columns that's been going around for years is when you think about managing, the word managing is checking things off the list, right? Getting things in order. And typically, when we think of managing, we manage things, and there are a lot of things that we have to manage in multifamily. So, as a manager, when we're managing multi-million-dollar assets, there are a lot of things that need to be managed, right? But when it comes to people, and this is the difference that I want people to go, when it comes to people, we should be leading people, not managing them. Now, it doesn't mean that people with the title of community manager, assistant community manager, regional property manager, leasing manager, whatever manager is in your title, that's not to say that you are not a leader, because that's actually quite the opposite. You are a leader. But when you think about how you approach things, if you're looking at tasks, right, those can be managed. Assets, reports, whatever, budget, all the things. But then when you look at people, we want to try really hard to lead them as often as possible. Now, sometimes you do have to manage them, right? There are processes and guidelines and checklists and all the things that we have to do in our jobs. But are you spending enough time leading and developing your people? And that's what I would say, right? I wouldn't get too caught up on the titles, and I see where it can be confusing, because the title is different than the actual skill, if that makes sense.
Totally. The world is flooded with leadership, thought leadership books, leadership courses. There's really, like, anyone could actually write something about leadership and say that I'm a leadership coach. There's not a formal, I think, certification. Well, I guess there are
Well, there
certifications,
are
but
actually, there are
but
certifications.
but standards. But I think that doesn't stop, like, anyone to write a book about leadership, right? Or like to say, I'm doing a leadership course. So the question to you is, how can someone like me, for example, that's looking at improving their leadership skills, sort out and determine, like, what's like a legit leadership course that they had to take, or it's maybe not the greatest to spend their time and money on?
Sure. Well, there are a lot of organizations out there that have really been specializing in leadership for a long time. And so I know for me personally, when I look for, I mentioned I have 6 coaches, right? And so when I was trying to pick and choose where to align myself, when I was with the Education Institute as president of EI, we had a leadership task force where we were putting together leadership development curriculum for the executive level, mid-level VPs, RPMs, and then the site level teams. And we said, well, we could create something, but that's not the expertise of the Education Institute. And we know that there are organizations out there that is their expertise, right? They've been doing it for decades and decades. And so in that instance, after we looked at places like the Disney Institute and several others, but we landed on partnering with the Gallup organization, who does Clifton Strengths, right? And they have surveyed millions of people and hundreds of companies for decades, and they have really meaningful, trusted data on leadership and people development and employee engagement. So we partnered with them. We partnered with Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie has been around for years and years, right? And they are a trusted organization. And then we also partnered with Franklin Covey, another organization that's been around for decades and decades and is a trusted organization. And that's who we landed on. So similarly, when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I do leverage some of that. So I am a Gallup Clifton Strengths facilitator and coach, right? I love Dale Carnegie's stuff, and I've been through the Dale Carnegie course when I was with EI, courses rather, and Franklin Covey with two companies that I was with. We leveraged Franklin Covey and had them actually come in and speak with us. We also went to Disney, so all are great. But I would say, look at organizations who have a trusted track record for content. Now it's not to say that somebody can't be a newer leader and write a book, or maybe based on their experience of 30 years in the industry, whatever space they've been in, that they can write a book or even develop a course sharing their leadership lessons, because I do think that's valid, right? But I would say because there's so much out there, and if you're looking, I would look for organizations or people that have a track record, or honestly, if it's an individual, someone that you look at and you're like, wow, I want to be them when I grow up, right? Someone you would aspire to be, whose values and how they show up in the world resonates with you. That would be my litmus test. And so, Maxwell Leadership was one that resonated with me because I share very similar values to what the Maxwell Leadership Organization shares. And so because it was aligned with me, it made perfect sense for me to do that. And in addition to being licensed for some of the content, I get my own leadership and personal development when I go, because I'm meeting with other entrepreneurs and I'm part of the mentorship group. So I get mentored by John and some of the faculty members who don't just talk the talk, but they walk the walk. And when I look at them, I say, I want to be like that. So that would be my recommendation there. Great question.
In multifamily, maintenance technicians and maintenance personnel in general are often overlooked as key contributors to success. How can leaders elevate and empower their maintenance teams to perform at their best?
I love this question, because without our maintenance and service teams, we wouldn't be able to get anything done. I mean, it's so essential, right? And if you think about residents and when they come to your office, yeah, you may have a few that come in and they love the office staff and they want to come chit chat with you and catch up. But when they need something other than, paying their bill, more often than not, it's a maintenance issue, right? Hopefully we've got a great maintenance team that responds quickly, that is skilled and knowledgeable to be able to fix whatever's broken, that has great communication skills to communicate with us if they can't get the part, or if it's a complicated issue, or whatever the case may be. And because those service technicians and maintenance people, they are touching residents so often in terms of communication or fixing their stuff, we've got to provide the right level of leadership development, training, and resources to our service team, because they are a crucial component of our success as a company, as an industry, right? And so it's interesting to me. And I think, we've gotten better over the years because more people have been talking about it the last, 10, 15 years. I see people like you, like Paul Rhodes, and several others Mark Kukrow, who, their kind of life mission has been to help elevate service professionals and maintenance people. And I think that's awesome. Any company that's listening to this, I think you're all nodding in agreement. We could all say, maintenance people are crucial, but we also sometimes have trouble finding the right talent to fill those positions. And so if you look at statistics from the Gallup organization or Pew Research, when they talk about an employee engagement, so in addition to feeling supported by your leader, and your immediate supervisor is the number one most important person that will determine your success, but also whether or not you stay with a company. But the second most important area is, does my company provide me an opportunity for personal development and professional growth? And that's for all people, right? So if you're a company listening to this and you are not focusing on developing your maintenance and service team, it's not too late. The time to start is now, because you know how much they impact your customer experience, your customer satisfaction, your bottom line, your NOI, all the things, right? We cannot do what we do without having skilled and knowledgeable maintenance people and service professionals. Is that we've got to provide them opportunities, not only to make sure that they're, this is where I was going, sorry, skilled and knowledgeable from a technical perspective. Like, that's huge, right? They got to know how to do all the stuff and have the proper licensing and the technical expertise, and that's needed. That can also be trained to some degree, right? And so you can take someone who maybe you hired as a groundskeeper and work with them and on the job training and mentoring, and bring them to a make ready specialist, or bring them to an assistant tech. And I know some who started out as groundskeepers that are now CEOs of companies, but they went all the way up the chain, right? But in addition to that technical expertise, what are you doing to provide personal growth and leadership development opportunities to your maintenance people? Because just like what we said earlier with, sometimes people get promoted into roles because they were a star performer, but they've never been taught how to lead people, and maybe that's not their natural skill, talent, or ability. I see that happening in on the maintenance side of things, right? Where you've got someone who maybe was an awesome maintenance tech or assistant tech, gets moved into lead tech, which there is a difference, in my opinion, between lead tech and service supervisor, right? Because the lead tech, again, is focused on the process piece and doing all the things the right way and being efficient and getting it done. Whereas a service supervisor, they're no longer the person doing it. Their number one priority is people. And so what are we doing to train and mentor and coach our maintenance professionals so that we can make them ready for that next level, and to really focus on the people aspect of things? So those are some of my thoughts. We could have hours of conversation about this one, right? But I'm interested to know your perspective, with what's going on in that world, because that's the world that you've been living in for so long.
My perspective is this. I personally was a self-taught person. I learn. I looked up to, leaders. I learned from them. Not everybody is the same. When it comes to training to, even become a manager, to be able to manage processes and people, the emphasis is not there for the most part. The other challenge that I see in the industry as a whole, whenever times are tight, the first positions eliminated are the learning and development within organization. And then, a great word from Mark Hooker right here. Teams that don't train don't win. So how could you win with a team that's not trained? Like, that's, to me, that's insane. And the first thing that, the first place that you cut is your learning and development department. Obviously, huge challenges. I see those challenges also as opportunities, right? There's a group that I started. It's a leadership council that I started. I'm meeting with great multifamily leaders in facilities from all over the country, and we're trying to elevate the game. And
I
I
love
think,
that.
great things will come out of that. We brainstorm every other week, and we also record all the calls. They're public, and we put them up on YouTube. So all of our conversations are on my YouTube channel. So I have a lot of hope, right? And I'm super optimistic about the future. Now, speaking about the current situation, I just said lots of things to be desired. Now, most of the site level maintenance professionals are being managed, led by individuals that don't have maintenance knowledge, like property manager for the most part. The maintenance team reports to a property manager. With that being said, with that context, what leadership qualities do you think are essential for managing the maintenance teams effectively, particularly when addressing things like labor shortages and operational pressures?
Well, I'm going to go back to my role on site for a moment and kind of answer this as a former community manager. Okay. So if I think about the service, supervisors that I've worked with over the years, it was important to me as a manager to have a really close relationship with my service supervisor. So while I had an assistant community manager inside the office, right? I also had my other right hand person who was my service supervisor that ran the back of the house that made sure everything was working. And, oftentimes our shop was attached to the office, which was awesome. So I could that was their office right down the hall, right? And so I think it's really crucial for community managers to create an alliance and a really close working relationship with that service supervisor, because you can't get it done without them. And so, I have minimal maintenance knowledge. Like as a lease professional, I learned how to cut keys. I know how to plunge toilets. I know how to replace the flapper. I know how to paint, all the kind of the basic stuff, but I can't repair an AC, and some of the more complicated things that require lots and lots of training and licensing. But I knew enough to at least have an appreciation for everything that it takes, right, for service teams to be successful. And so having that really close relationship with my service supervisors was key, meeting with them regularly, listening to their stresses and what was going on or what wasn't working, and also giving them, an opportunity to really step up as the leader that they are, right? And so I think sometimes as managers or leaders, I see where people are maybe micromanaging or second guessing somebody or kind of being, I hate to use this word, but it's what's coming to the top of my mind, dictator-ish, right? And you're not going to be effective. People are going to be afraid of you. They're not going to like you. Nobody wants anyone to tell them what to do, right? We all want to feel like we have an opportunity to share our opinion and to be part of the decisions. And so again, community managers, open up the lines of communication. Hopefully many of you are already doing that, right? But if you feel like you have a service team or maybe you'd like to see more progress or better performance, in order to lead anyone effectively, you must first lead yourself. So I would challenge you to really be honest and ask yourself, am I managing this relationship to the best of my ability? And am I leading this person in a way that is going to help them flourish, right? And we do have some female maintenance professionals, which is awesome. I love seeing that. But if I think about the service supervisors that I had, they're tough guys, right? They all have an ego, and you need to let them be that leader and let them be kind of the owner of their domain. And so the way that you are successful in doing that is respect what they bring to the table and listen to them, right? Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Nobody wants to be told what to do, but if you ask questions and have a mind of curiosity, you're going to learn a lot about that person, and then you two are going to be more effective, and you're going to earn more respect. You earn more respect when you respect the other person and what they bring to the table than you do if you're just telling someone what to do or not listening. It's pretty, simple human relationships 101, right? Sounds simple, but not everyone's good at it.
Stephanie, I know that you're doing presentations, you're traveling across the country, you have some amazing programs going on. I'd like for you to share with me and the audience, what are the next steps? Where can we see you?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. So I am doing several private events for some of my clients that are across the country. So I'm actually going to Nashville next week for a client, and we're kicking off year 2 of their leadership development program with their second learning cohort. We started with their executive team last year, and next week we're kicking it off with their regional property managers and some of their corporate team, which, by the way, in that executive kickoff last year, we had several people from the maintenance side in there, the leaders. And this year, the same. We'll have some of the rehab team in there this year. So super excited about that. And they're all learning together. But then I actually come to your city. I don't know if you're going to be there yet. You might be going somewhere else, but I am coming to Atlanta on February 20th. And I'm super excited about this because this is actually a public event. So it's not a private client event, which means anyone can attend. And we still have tickets available, but it is called Live to Lead. And what Live to Lead is, it's a 1-day leadership and personal growth event. You are going to hear from 11 of the world's best speakers in leadership and personal development. 7 of them will be there in person. 4 of them will be rebroadcast. John Maxwell himself, you're going to hear from him. And he recorded this specifically for me as a Live to Lead host and for you who are going to be in the room. So you can't hear this talk anywhere else. But I'm going to have Dr. Debbie there, Chikora Connor, Melissa D. White, Araya McGarry, who's an Emmy Award-winning host, Angel Santiago, Jason Stoughton. It is going to, Rachel Weaver, it is going to be an incredible 1-day event where not only are you going to walk away motivated and inspired, but you're going to walk away with actionable strategies that you can put into action, not only in your professional life, but in your personal life to be a better, more successful person in getting more of what you want. So February 20th, Atlanta, Georgia, Modex Studio. And I'll share the link with you, but it is leadingpeopleandteamstosuccess.com/live to lead. And then after that, I'm speaking at the Resmania conference in San Antonio. I'm speaking in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin for IREM, doing their full day leasing seminar. I will be going back to Wisconsin for a private client event. I am actually starting the 2nd year of the Triangle Apartment Association Leadership Lyceum group. We kick off next week virtually, and then we have several in-person sessions. So super excited to partner with them for the 2nd year in a row. And then there's a lot more, but thanks for asking. So, and I will be at Apartmentalize. I actually am not speaking this year because I did not submit an RFP because I was traveling so much. And so for the first time, I think probably ever maybe, or at least in the last 15 years, I am just going to be an attendee, which I'm excited about because then I just really get to enjoy and kind of participate versus having to stress about a presentation. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, I hope to run into you at an A and I grab a cup of coffee and chat in person.
I would love that. Absolutely.
Stephanie, it's been a pleasure having you on. So much more to talk about, so little time. The hour just flew by.
Absolutely.
I love to, maybe do another episode down the road about leadership. It's something that I'm passionate about, probably not like most people, more of a questioning, side, because I'm trying to understand, right, and sort things out. I think a lot of folks are there, have similar questions. So thank you for answering. Thank you for making time for me, for the audience today. It's been amazing having you on.
Well, thank you, Adrian, for the opportunity. I'm so glad we were able to make this work. And I'd love to continue this too, because I want to learn more about the important work that you all are doing with your maintenance and service leadership council. I think that's awesome and highly needed. So I'll make a point to go on YouTube, but I do want to talk to you about that a little bit more. I think that's fantastic. Great job.
Absolutely. Great to have you. And again, hoping to continue this conversation down the road.
Absolutely. Make it a great week. Thank you, Adrian.
Everyone, thank you so much for watching us today. Another episode of Multifamily Chronicles in a Book. See you next time. Take care.